Right, the Payments Innovation Panel is up next, and I'd like to thank our session sponsor, ICBC. Give them a big round of applause, please. Now, this panel will explore and discuss a variety of innovations and enabling technologies that are shaping the future of payments in Aotearoa. We'll be talking about opportunities they see for innovation across the payments value chain. The lead panellist for the session is Blinkpay Chief Product Officer and co-founder Adrian Smith. Kia ora, Adrian. Adrian is a digital native who spent 14 plus years doing big bank transformation in the UK for Lloyds Banking Group and Barclays Bank UK before returning home to Aotearoa in March 2021. Welcome home. Our next panellist from Zepto, Chief Product Officer Julia Bearzatto. Julia is a seasoned fintech leader with more than 15 years' experience in the Australian technology and payments industries. She has extensive experience building, growing and scaling multiple payment businesses into robust, customer-orientated organisations. Welcome. Thank you. Our next panellist is Mark Colley, Senior Manager at Redbird Ventures, the corporate venture capital subsidiary of Westpac New Zealand. Welcome him to the stage, please. Mark has a background in commercial law and experience in banking and digital products, as well as having been a small business owner-operator. Mark is currently focused on working with startups to bring innovative financial technology experiences to life in New Zealand. Thank you for being here, Mark. And can we also welcome to the stage co-founder of Dosh, Shane Marsh. Dosh is New Zealand's first digital wallet. Shane has deep experience in financial services covering New Zealand, Australia, Singapore and UK markets. And now I'll hand over to our lead panellist. Give him another big round of applause, please. Adrian. Thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora. Kia ora ki tēnā tuku, kia ora ki tērā tuku, kia atu, kia atoa, kia matara, te ei, mauri ora. Kia ora koutou, ko Adrian tuku ingoa. So I am Adrian, I'm the Chief Product Officer for the Māori FinTech Blinkpay. We are a SaaS-driven organisation. You'll see pretty shortly from all of us, we all have something to do around venture capital. We don't have big bags of money behind us. So we've all got a very different take on what's going on. But I'm very pleased to be here today, and I'm very pleased to introduce Julia.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Adrian. I'm Julia Bearzatto. So Zepto is a new entrant into the New Zealand market. So we've been in Australia for the last 6 years. Account-to-account payments is our jam. So we've recently entered the New Zealand market around 3 weeks ago with the first iteration of our product offering, and we're keen to evolve and learn more about New Zealand. So,
thank you, Julia. Mark, give us a bit of context.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Colley. I'm from Redbird Ventures, the corporate venture capital subsidiary of Westpac New Zealand. So we invest in New Zealand fintech businesses that have a direct line of sight to doing a partnership with Westpac New Zealand. So we have equity to invest in Kiwi fintechs.
Lovely, thank you, Mark. And Shane?
Great. Hi, I'm Shane Marsh. I'm ex-banker, current fintech entrepreneur. Launched Dosh last year, New Zealand's first digital wallet. Launching with instant real-time peer-to-peer payments, ability to request to pay as well, and then more recently adding a Visa debit card to the wallet, bringing split bills and cashback direct to your wallet to life. I'm really excited about bringing the world's best innovation to New Zealand shores.
Kia ora, thank you, Shane. So when we first met as a panel, we sat down and sort of said, look, what is the key message we want everyone to take away from today's session? And we sat there thinking about it for a little while, and we decided, actually, we'll start with our immutable truth, so we can baseline everyone's kind of thinking around where we're coming from. And so our immutable truth was payments innovation in New Zealand hasn't kept pace with what is happening internationally. I think that's been a pretty well-trodden theme today. And so it begs the question, what can we do about it? So we're taking a bit of a forward-looking out view on that one. So that's where we're coming from. We're going to start off, Shane, given the real-time payments has been a bit of a thing today. So, Shane, real-time open payment platforms can provide a range of next-generation payments capabilities. What do you think it looks like for the future from an Aotearoa perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Look, real-time payments is not a new thing globally. I think there's 56 different countries around the world that have real-time networks today. And together with open banking, the saturation of smartphones, the advent of crypto, there's a lot happening in that space, and real-time payments really kind of interacts with a lot of other innovations that are happening to deliver new services into the market. A lot of these actually got launched out of Europe and the UK, and then it's kind of just washed like a wave across the world. And that wave is now beginning to send ripples into the New Zealand market as you see new entrants coming to the market, such as Dosh and Zepto and Blinkpay, that are bringing new services and new innovations to the market. And I think for real-time, for us, we've been a real-time provider now for just over a year, and we've got a lot of data. So we've got a lot of insights into, the use cases in New Zealand, people moving money, why they move money, how often they move money in a real-time way, and then also how do those use cases fit with other services, right? Because I think real-time in itself has relatively finite interest. But when you put it with other services, the ability, say, for example, on a Saturday night to pay your restaurant bill, split the costs around the table and get instantly paid back so you've got some money to go to the bar, that type of stuff was really where real-time comes to life.
Out of curiosity, Shane, where do you think value gets unlocked with real-time payments, given your experience?
Yeah, so for me, it's really about when you put it in the hands of people where it makes a difference to their lives, right? So let me give you an example, because for us, it's been all about learning the use cases. Mm-hmm. We spoke earlier about putting a tool in the market and just kind of seeing what the use cases were to come out of it, and that's effectively kind of what we did. And I'll give you an example of where value can be created. On Saturday night, someone who's in a difficult position and they've run out of money and they're at the supermarket and they need to buy food for their kids, and they can't do that today. There's no way to get them the money instantly on a Saturday night so they can buy that food. And so instant payments in that way can make a real difference to someone's life. You can get them the money. Perhaps they could do an instant drawdown on a benefit advance and actually be able to buy food for their children. For me, it's those use cases that make a difference in someone's lives where the value is really unlocked.
So it sounds like it's serving a public good, so that feels like a good thing. Thumbs up. Julia, what's been your experience in Australia with real-time payments?
Yeah, so, Zepto has been in the real-time payment space for the last few years. So we are connected to the new payments platform. We're also, so this is in Australia, obviously. We are going to be the first connected institution, so the first non-bank integrating directly to the new payments platform in Australia. Ooh. It's very, very, very exciting.
Payments is exciting.
We've got a number of customers who are really, really interested in real time, and what we're typically finding is these are around emerging businesses, right? Digital native businesses. Typically, the concepts around stored value and wallets are coming into it, so they're trying to get money in somewhere quickly to then be able to take further action on that money. So, we've got a number of lending companies. There's use cases around cryptos, around gambling organisations, around people who are trying to just get money from A to B as quickly as possible. We've got use cases where we're doing payouts to taxi drivers, as an example, right, at the end of a shift, instead of having to wait for the next week. So we're seeing more and more different businesses starting to use the capability, which is really, really exciting. We're learning every day through our customers.
Superb. When I was in the UK working at Lloyd's Banking Group, we built faster payments infrastructure in 2008. And the thing that we noticed almost instantly was there was a problem around intraday transactions and reconciliation and settlement, which was a bit of a problem. But then the moment faster payments came along, it really unlocked the ability to manage cash flow, because I'm sure anyone in a small business would agree that managing cash flow is the number one thing you spend all your time thinking about. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, you know this stuff better than I do. And so that was one of the segments that we felt benefited the most from that, at least in my observations of faster payments.
Yep.
Anyway, enough about me. So, Mark, given your VC background, you must bring an entirely different lens to how you look at all this stuff. So, and you must be environmentally scanning the world, right? So what kind of trends are you watching around the world in this space?
Yeah, there's a lot of trends that I'm really excited about. There's subscriptions and everything seeming to be as a service. I think there's some pretty profound implications coming through for micropayments and real-time payments, obviously, and digital payments. We also have an eye to things that are a bit further out, a few terms that I was expecting to hear a little bit more today but haven't. I think maybe thankfully Web3, CBDCs, metaverse, blockchain. So we have an eye to those things, but we're not specifically focused on investing in those areas. But really the thing that I'm most excited about in the payments innovation space is a little bit about what Will was talking about previously, and that's the marriage of data and payments together to create unbelievable experiences for New Zealanders. So at the moment, there's this kind of traditional paradigm where a payment activity happens at the end of an interaction. Mm-hmm. So you go through an experience with a business or with someone else, and you have all of that interaction, and then there's this payment that occurs at the end. I think that we have an opportunity to integrate payments into the overall experience. And there's a couple of things that are going to unlock that. One is open banking, and the other one that's been mentioned quite a few times today is ISO 20022. So I think if you combine the power of those two things together, you can create some really fantastic experiences. And I'll just do two quick examples. So the first is, today, if I have an interaction with a plumber, for instance, the plumber is going to email me their invoice, and I'm going to physically transpose their data into online banking using
amazing.
a keyboard.
Yeah.
And then they're going to receive that payment. And then this is where the real problem is. That plumber then has to go through a process to reconcile the information that they already had back with that payment. And so I think just, having the data in the payment via ISO 20022 or whatever mechanism that is going to unlock great experiences. And then the other thing just quickly that Will talked about was about like attesting or making an attestation of some other piece of information. And so if you take that to the extreme, for instance, I'm going through the process now of a house sale, and I have to go through KYC and AML with the lawyer, but I'm making a payment to that lawyer, and the people that I'm making the payment from, the bank, know my identity. And there's no reason why in that transaction my identity can't be attested. So those are the sorts of things that I'm really excited about being unlocked with these new technologies.
Out of curiosity, question to the panel. In the last decade, is there any in particular innovation that you think have stood out that's really come to the fore? Open question.
Globally or in New Zealand?
Or just generally worldwide or anywhere?
Yeah, I'll pick one. So the rise of mobile wallets has been phenomenal across the globe, with literally billions in use today. And the growth trajectory is huge in terms of the payments that are flowing through those. But in terms of kind of social good, in certain countries where financial inclusion is an issue, it actually has brought financial services to the mobile phone for a lot of people, and that has enabled them to join the financial system, which is, brings a lot of other benefits in terms of good money management and all the other kind of skills that you can teach people in that way. And so that has transformed a lot of people's lives and brought people who were previously perhaps outside the system into the system. One thing that we've really noticed is that the application of that type of a solution, it really varies by country depending on what the different countries' needs are. But for some of those third world countries, it really has made a difference to a lot of people's lives.
Shane, are you ready for a really unfair and pointed question? If you want to tell me to bugger off, I'm okay with that.
Go for it.
When you first got to New Zealand, was anyone talking about digital wallets?
No. So I was in Singapore for 3 years before we came back and started Dosh, and Singapore's just such an amazing place where it's a really advanced economy with people who are very digitally savvy, and a government that drives fintech as a topic and opportunity. And using these apps really just became part of our everyday life. And we came back to New Zealand with a sense of starting the digital wallet, but I'd been out of the market for a few years and I didn't really know where the kind of lingo had got to. And so we put an article out in the Herald that, well, we're going to start New Zealand's first digital wallet. And it was like, what is he talking about? Like, never heard of digital wallets. People thought, this must be crypto or some sort of a scam. And one thing that I'm really pleased about is, it really highlighted that there's a lot of education to do. But as we've kind of gone down that path, lots of others have joined the conversation, and you hear kind of Worldline talking about it today as well, that this is something that, yes, it is very new to New Zealand.
Yes.
It's not new around the world, and it's great to see New Zealand beginning to look at some of these topics, not just from a consumer perspective, but the number of really large institutions who have come to us and said, how do we get what you've got? Because we can see a use for our customer base, engagement, et cetera, really gives me a sense that the opportunity is going deep and broad.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Julia, how would you characterise the next generation of payment capabilities? Specifically, what sets them apart as something other than evolution? So revolution as opposed to evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Adrian. I think that there is, payments is complex, right? The fact that we've got so many people talking, so many people in the room all talking about the same topic, and we have a payments industry, right? It is complex. When we talk about the typical characteristics, we continue to evolve, and it's almost like that next iteration of let's do things faster. But if we actually break that down and we talk about, okay, so we want faster payments. Okay, cool. That we can't just put a real-time badge on top of something like BEX. We actually need to think about the ecosystem that it exists in, right? So how are we going to tackle fraud, right? If we're transferring money instantly, how are we verifying somebody's identity and ensuring that parties within that transaction or to that transaction are known, right? How are we ensuring that, if one of the participants is offline, what happens, right? So we've almost got to rebuild and break some of those high-level concepts down. When we think about security, right? I think authentication, tokenization has been a thing that's been spoken about heavily, more so in the credit card world. As we evolve though, right, and we are giving more accessibility to people from their actual bank accounts, we've got a level of education to do. We have to be very, very mindful of authentication and how we create a safe environment, and we protect people as well, right, without being overly paternalistic as well. And I think the last kind of point there is that we also need to be very, very open, at least, to and this is part of this has been around solutions or technologies looking for a solution, right? If we start to rethink the way that we do things, so we've got, as an example in the cards world, we've got card present and card not present. Cool. Okay. That's and understanding there are reusable assets and the like. But as we look at evolving technologies, it was really interesting hearing all about the sessions this afternoon. We need to open our eyes to how some of those technologies can actually recreate the way that we need to operate. If we start to look at Web3, you go, Mark, there's your reference on this panel, and we explore blockchain, smart contracts, immutability, we've got auditability, how can we actually take forward some of these concepts into that next evolution of payment offerings?
Oh, kia ora, Julia. When I was working at Barclays Bank with Holly Renief, and she was a digital director there too. Kia ora, Holly. We worked with this guy in e-crime called Doug Gilbert, and whenever there was issues around IT security and privacy, he would then disappear for 3 days. And we'd say, Doug, where you been? He's like, at MI5, but I can't tell you about it. But if you come to the pub. And that was a level of, that's how strong our security stance was.
Yep.
We had folks who were basically convening with Secret Service and government to try and build up national defences. And so that's the kind of thing that we need to be really mindful of, but obviously new technology architecture enables that.
100%. We have to be more protective of this. Let's look at Optus, let's look at Medibank. We have a role, a very important role to play in protecting the security of our consumers.
Yeah,
Julie.
and I think when you bring in these new technologies, there's clearly a risk that needs to be managed in terms of new ways of accessing or breaking into or taking someone's ID, etc. But there's also some really interesting opportunities to improve security and reduce fraud as well. And I'll give you an example from yesterday. Someone contacted us and said, I received a fraud on my card. Thankfully, it was only $3.50. But what was interesting is that we have instant notifications. And so as soon as that card was used and it wasn't her, she knew and she froze the card in the app and contacted us. And I hadn't really the reason we put instant notifications in it was this would be a good idea to tell people when they were using their card. But there is some really interesting side benefits in terms of introducing new services that can actually reduce fraud and increase security as well, and we should be thinking about and exploring those.
Interestingly, when the UK was looking at this, I argued vigorously against notifications for everything. I was overruled by the industry, and it turns out I was wrong, because actually there was a hygiene and comfort factor for you stand at the ATM, you got your headphones in, and then you get a ka-ching, and then a notification saying £10 has been withdrawn from your account, and you're still waiting for the machine to spit it out. And so that became something really comforting for a lot of folks that gave them a sense of control that I don't think I was aware of at that time when I was arguing the contrary. Anyway, enough about me. Mark, so based on what you've seen and what you've done, there's a piece around what are the next generation of customers wanting, because we've heard some ideas that were shared earlier around the younger generation. Maybe they're not worth listening to. Thank you for that inspiration, David. But what do you think is going to be driving some of this future capabilities? What innovation speaks to these groups, do you think?
Yeah, I think that transparency and control is really important, and wanting to have frictionless and digital payments. But what I really think is interesting, and it's what you've just been talking about, is that the next generation has a different view of trust. And I really enjoyed the session earlier on trust. And for us to all collectively start thinking about what trust means for the next generation when it comes to their money. And there's maybe some assumptions about, there's a term being thrown about at the moment, scamdemic, probably some assumptions that it's older people being scammed, but that's not necessarily the truth. And so I think we all have a role to play in terms of what does trust look like for the next generation. And if you think about how trust manifests, like in some generations, it's like, I trust the bank because I physically drive past the bank every day. But that's not necessarily the mindset of other generations, and their trusts come from peer groups, it comes from celebrities, it comes from the actual technology experiences themselves, exactly what you talked about. The trust there comes from the notification. And so I think we've got a really big role all collectively to play in understanding what trust means going forward.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I was talking to one of my buddies who's the EVP at Wells Fargo, and he was saying, he's like, prior to COVID, he's like, there's been a resurgence in foot traffic into the branch. I'm like, why? He's like, these 18 to 24-year-olds who want to invest their money and get mortgages. I'm like, huh? And he said, yeah, it's that generation that actually are creating footfall into the branch that they hadn't anticipated upon, which I was surprised by.
Wow.
Because our assumption is that they're giving up all of this data, they're using TikTok for everything, but there's something fundamentally different about your money, and we just need to recognise that.
Yeah, fair, cool. Okay, Julia, do you see platform and network players having an increasing or reducing influence in the future, and why?
Definitely increasing. So embedded finance, anyone, right?
Oh, totally, yeah.
So, payments are becoming more and more invisible, right? We're seeing concepts emerge around, banking as a service. I haven't heard that mentioned today as yet, I don't think, right? Just as emerging concepts. And how can some of the banks effectively shift up the role that they're playing as part of that broader ecosystem? In many cases, that's going to result in different relationships, and depending on the positioning of that that's not necessarily a bad thing in a lot of circumstances. And, the other thing that's emerging more globally is around, the rise of the super app. Now, whether you're a believer or a naysayer, it is something that is evolving from a trends perspective.
Yeah, I think it was, Takeshi Natsuno who predicted that your mobile phone will be the remote control of your life back in 2004. And there was this rise of the phone being able to do things, and super apps was part of that narrative. And it was part of the NTT Tacoma vision and strategy back in 2004. So you're right, brother. Well done. Okay, question for everyone on the panel, sorry. How easy or difficult is it to innovate in the current ecosystem? And what works well and not so well? Any reflections, thoughts?
Yeah, I think stepping out of a long corporate career and into a startup phase, I think any startup's got its challenges, and innovating in financial services in a startup is probably taking things to an even more challenging environment. I think today New Zealand doesn't necessarily have the infrastructure or the open banking or perhaps some of the ecosystem flexibility and opportunities that perhaps some other countries have. However, clearly today everyone in this room is focused on bringing those things to life here for the benefit of the country. In addition to that, I think regulation is really important in terms of the way in which we look at how is regulation facilitating innovation and competition. And I'll give you two examples that, for me, could be re-looked at in the market. The first is that to get a banking license in New Zealand, you need $30 million in capital. That's twice the amount you need in either Australia or Singapore. And talking to the team about the Deposit Takers Act, they're thinking about lifting that further to 40 million. Does that encourage further competition and innovation in the banking industry? And then the second is...
Just like cut across real quick, that's 30 times the requirement for a small banking license in the UK, just saying.
Yeah, so there's an opportunity there to rethink that for the future of competition in the banking industry. And the other for me is, who are the next generation and what do they want? Well, they're the Gen Z people who are digital natives who love technology and early adopters, but our electronic onboarding regulations today don't really allow for the onboarding of young people and immigrants, because it requires 2 IDs, and if you've got a young person, they'll be lucky to have 1 ID, let alone 2 IDs. So, for us as a nation, we each play different roles, whether it be from a solution provider or a regulator or whatever. We need to think about how do we play a great role in terms of fostering innovation and creating opportunities for the next generation, not just ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's right? Because if it's not us here in this room, then who? Right? It's got to be down to us. Any reflections on that, Mark?
Yeah, just from an investment perspective, one of the big challenges for payments companies that we see is monetization models.
Yes.
And coming back to what I was talking about earlier about having data and payments together and really creating a richer experience, I think that it's really important for... Well, this is what we have as part of talking to fintech businesses, is that they've got monetization strategies that are more than just we're going to be slightly cheaper than existing interchange, and that's that they're driving additional value that's coupled alongside the payment. And I think that that's the types of experiences that you guys are creating in your businesses. It's more than just we're going to do simple payments activities. So yeah, the big challenge is what is the next ways of having monetization models that are wrapped around payments.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Julia, what has your experience been coming into the ecosystem from Australia?
Coming into the ecosystem, it's been quite fascinating, to learn. We have entered the market with effectively our first iteration of our Australian offerings, all around sitting on top of DE. Now, what I've found really, really fascinating is where... And I'm on board with a lot of the themes in terms of where New Zealand is at in terms of lagging behind some other trends more globally. But one of the things that's been impressive for for international entrance into the local market, has been around certain decisions that have been made. So, as an example, SBI 365 is not a whole new set of rails, right? There are some interesting things that, by going down the path of CDR action initiation first, right? In Australia, we're sitting there going, how does CDR read work with some of our new upcoming real-time payment methods such as Pay2? Now let's work out how that works. So I think that, from a New Zealand perspective, it's a really interesting time in terms of how all of these things converge to create that next evolution of the New Zealand payments market.
Oh, indeed. And I'm going to name drop you now, Jody, like I said I would. You can pay me later. Jody Bullen, if anyone doesn't know Jody from ANZ, if you meet him, he's very memorable. But he wrote this article about a year ago, and it was based on the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as an industry, right? Can we just figure out, we had this thing in the UK called co-opetition, where everyone kind of mulled together and we sort of said, look, let's create the market, or the cake, if you will. We'll fight for the slice size later, but let's just do this thing because it's in the public good, and it's a good thing to do. And so I think if we can continue to drive toward that, because I think that's what we need. Because as was a comment made earlier by Will, it can't be done alone. It needs everyone all in together. And so I would exhort everyone, let's do this together.
If I just add to that, today in the market, we've got your large organisations that have got challenges for various reasons, and so they're highly scaled, but they're really struggling to innovate because they've got a lot on their plate, and that was kind of my previous position. And now we've got another type of company which is small and innovative and moving really fast and doing lots of really interesting things, but could benefit from working with a scaled provider, bringing some of those innovative solutions to the market. And for me, the way in which to kind of move forward together with both those parties is to actually get them to work together and help them solve each other's issues. And therefore we can bring great solutions to a scaled customer base as opposed to trying to do it separately.
I couldn't agree more. Back in the dawn of open banking in the UK in 2018, we had all these little fintechs coming to Barclays like, we're going to eat your lunch. I'm like, how are you going to eat our lunch? We've been doing this for 300 years. We've survived 2 world wars. What have you got? A mobile app. Wow. Trembling. But the really interesting thing, though, through the fullness of time was you had these brilliant customer experiences. They were wonderful. The onboarding was end-to-end digital. It was beautiful. It was elegant. It could be done in one session. You didn't have to fiddle with paperwork and bollocks. You had a single session end-to-end onboarding experience, and it made you feel special. But then didn't really make any money. And so at one end of the spectrum, because I was in big banks, we made lots of money, but we're all about conforming to the plan and sticking to it. And you had these fintechs doing all this really cool, weird stuff that was beautiful for customers, but wasn't making money. And so if we can find some kind of middle ground where we've got beautiful customer experiences coming together with the commercial side of things, I feel like that could be a sweet spot for New Zealand. Just a thought, just for Colley.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think that it's that bank partnerships, so if you want to have a partnership with a bank, your partnership needs to be strategic to the bank.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's because if you're trying to do a partnership with a bank and the reason for the bank doing it is that they can have a press release about it, it's never going to get prioritised. It's really important that you pick a partnership with a bank where it is strategically right for you, the fintech, and for the bank. And then the second point on that is there's a whole bunch about being bank ready.
Yep.
And if you're a fintech talking to a bank about a partnership, we'll have a whole other conversation separate to this about what bank ready means and what that journey looks like.
Yeah.
But don't underestimate it.
If I could just build on bank ready, operationally ready as well, it's got to be the whole wraparound service. It's not enough to say, here are endpoints, ta-da, off you go.
Yeah, we've gone and got an AML document put in place, but we don't really have any operationalisation of it. It's not bank ready, for instance. So, but then the bank has a role in helping those fintechs get to that state. So yeah, that's the kind of things that we're trying to work on.
Indeed, indeed. From us to you, thank you from us, the panel. Thank you for being a great audience. Thank you to Shane, Mark, Julia. Brilliant. Have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Thank you.